Hey YouTube, this is Project SP4 here with Jamie-san, and today in this discussion we'll be looking at a card that, if you haven't already guessed it by now, is Mew Prime from the Triumvirate set. Also, with black and white emerging powers only just being released, I wouldn't say it's a bad set, although I do think it's very inconclusive. However, it does bring up a few talking points for our card discussion. So we're going to look into that, as well as looking at Mew's versatility and why it provides so much synergy with some of the other cards that I'm going to talk about. Lastly, if you are involved in playing competitively and you don't like the effect the Pokemon Catcher has had on the modern format, then this deck is a great deck in terms of not having to play it. As well as that, it stops your opponent playing it on you. Pokemon Catcher is still valued quite highly in terms of price, and this is a great alternative to not having to play it. So now we've got all that out the way, let's finally move on and get into our card discussion. I guess the best place for us to start would be to look at the card and analyse it. So let's look into Mew Prime. I'm not going to go into too much depth on the card itself, but more so just focus on two of the most important things that you should always look out for in a card, and that is its ability, providing that it has one, which in this case Mew Prime does, and its attack. So let's look into Mew's ability. Mew's ability, Lost Link, enables you to use any attack of any of the Pokemon that are in the Lost Zone. However, you still need to provide the necessary energy in order to use that attack. Pairing that with Mew's attack, See Off for one Psychic Energy will allow you to search your deck for one Pokemon and put that Pokemon in the Lost Zone. So automatically, you can kind of see how the card plays out. So here's an in-game scenario for you. On turn 1, you'd most likely want to attach the energy to Mew and then throw off whatever it is you want to see off into the Lost Zone, so that by turn 2 you can use any attacks of the Pokemon that are in the Lost Zone. So this brings us to a section which I've labelled as the Seeing Off section, where we're pretty much just going to answer the obvious question, and that is, what Pokemon would we want to see off into the Lost Zone? I'm going to start with some Pokemon, which I guess you can call them obvious choices when looking into Mew Prime. Then afterwards, I'm going to look into some other ones, as well as some of the newer Pokemon that were released from the Emerging Powers set. So card number 1, one of the most obvious choices when playing Mew Prime, and that is Muck from the Undaunted set. Let's look into why this is commonly used with Mew. Most players will be primarily using Muck for its first attack, Sludge Drag. Like Mew Prime, Sludge Drag only requires one Psychic Energy to use. Going first in this format can often be seen as a huge advantage, and with this deck is no exception. By going first, it means you can place a Psychic attachment onto Mew and put Mew up to your active spot to see off a Pokemon, so that by next turn you can use that Pokemon's attack, or continuously keep seeing off Pokemon. By seeing off Pokemon early on, it sets you up for a later game when you simply cannot afford to see off more Pokemon in risk of losing a prize. Because you put the Psychic Energy on Mew on your first turn so that you can use See Off, Muck's Slug Drag also only has a requirement of one Psychic Energy. Putting this into context, it means that you can use your energy attachment for this turn on another one of your Pokemon. By doing this and seeing off Pokemon that have the same energy and type requirement as Mew Prime, it means that you can get one turn ahead of your opponent. So let's look into what Slug Drag actually does. For one Psychic Energy, Slug Drag allows you to switch a defending Pokemon with one of your opponent's bench Pokemon, and that defending Pokemon is now confused and poisoned. Other than being confused and poisoned, I guess one of the more obvious questions at this point is, what are the benefits of having one of your opponent's Pokemon stuck in the active zone? Well, here's where the lock comes in. By using Slug Drag, what you're aiming to do is target their Pokemon on their bench that have really high retreat costs and bring them up to the active zone. This means that your opponent has to continuously attach energy cards to that Pokemon in order to switch them out. By doing this, it enables you to see off other Pokemon that within your deck, as well as setting up your bench Pokemon, leaving your opponent stuck there, attaching energies to simply retreat their active Pokemon. Even if you bring up a Pokemon that only has one retreat cost, this still forces your opponent to have to place their energy attachment for that turn onto the Pokemon that they want to retreat, and this puts them behind a turn. Another really unique thing about Muk Slugdrag is that by targeting a Pokemon and bringing it up to the active zone that has an ability, say for example Typhlosion or Magnezone Prime, it means that by the time they get to the active spot and they're afflicted by a special condition, it means they can't use their ability. Not only have you pulled up a Pokemon with a high retreat cost, but you've also stopped it from using its ability, which pretty much narrows it down to the last thing it has, and that's its attack. Even then, it's confused, so its attack's on a coin flip. So let's move on and look at some other Pokemon that provide good CF material for Mew Prime. Another really obvious choice when talking about Mew, and also commonly used, is Crobat Prime. Crobat Prime from the Unleashed set, like Muk, only requires one Psychic Energy to use, and it has 2 attacks, making it a really ideal choice when paired with Mew Prime. So let's look into Crobat Prime's first attack, Severe Poison. Severe Poison for 1 Psychic Energy allows you to poison a defending Pokemon, however you put 4 damage counters instead of 1 on that Pokemon in between turns. Although it's not the main attack that you're wanting to use with Crobat, it still provides a great counter for cards such as Donphan Prime and Samurott from the Black and White set, or any other card that has a similar ability. Moving on to Crobat's second attack, Skill Dive. For 1 Psychic Energy, Skill Dive allows you to choose one of your opponent's Pokemon, and this attack does 30 damage to that Pokemon, however you don't apply weakness or resistance for bench Pokemon. In context to the lock, when your opponent has the Pokemon stuck in the active zone with the really high retreat cost, by seeing off Crobat Prime, you can snipe around the bench dealing 30 damage to your opponent's bench Pokemon, and this allows you to take cheap and easy prizes. So let's move on to our final card, which I would label as an obvious choice when paired with Mew Prime, and that card is Jumpluff from the Heart Gold Soul Series base set. I'm not going to bother going to Jumpluff's second attack, Leaf Guard, and that is because I feel with Mew only having 60 HP, it doesn't really do it enough justice. However, Mass Attack for 1 Grass Energy will do 10 damage times the number of Pokemon in play, both you and your opponents. With Mass Attack providing a potential 120 damage, I guess the obvious point of concern at this point is putting in the Grass Energy. However, providing a Rainbow Energy instead will not only compensate for the Grass Energy, however it will also still enable you to use the attacks with some of your Psychic Pokemon. To conclude this section, here are a couple more cards that I've included that you can see off with Mew Prime. I'm not going to go into them as such, but it's more thought for idea, so here they are. This last section is a section that I've labelled the main deck, and when I refer to main deck, I'm mainly talking about the Pokemon that you're likely to use with Mew Prime. Not so much the Pokemon that you're seeing off, but the Pokemon that are going to be on the bench and that you're going to be playing with. So let's get straight into it. Probably the most commonly played card with Mew Prime is Vileplume from the Undaunted set. Not so much for its attack, but for its ability, which means that neither you or your opponent can play any trainer cards. Depending on how you deck build, this shouldn't really be much of a disadvantage to you. For example, if you play your deck with more supporter cards and trainers, then it shouldn't affect you as much as it affects your opponent. More importantly, you're looking to keep that lock in place, meaning that cards like Switch will become useless to your opponent and they won't be able to get that Pokemon out of the active zone without having to pay the retreat cost. One of the more common problems you'll have with Vileplume is Oddish. Now Oddish in this format only has 40 HP, which means it's exposed to 2 things. Number 1 is Yanmega's linear attack. Dealing 40 damage straight off will knock out an Oddish, meaning that it will put you back a couple of turns because you won't be able to evolve it. And the second thing is Pokemon Catcher. With Pokemon Catcher already increasing in popularity, it means they don't even have to flip anymore. They can just choose that Pokemon they want to bring to the active zone, say for example your Oddish, and knock it out, placing you back a couple of turns because you can't evolve it. From previous experiences, the only way to get around this is by placing several of the same Pokemon on the bench at the same time. Pokemon Collector is a great card to do this, and even Pokemon Communication if you can get enough Oddish onto the bench just so that you can evolve the next turn. Another card that works really well this deck and plays out very similar to Crobat's Skill Dive is Mega Prime from the Triumph set. Firstly though, it's really important that we look into Mega Prime's ability and why it's so splashable with so many decks. Its ability Insight means if you have the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent, then the requirements for the attack are 0, meaning that you don't have to attach any energy to Mega Prime. Keeping in mind Mega's ability, let's look into its attacks. Its first attack, Linear Attack, allows you to do 40 damage to any of your opponent's Pokemon, however you don't apply weakness or resistance for the bench Pokemon. And its second attack, Sonic Boom, means that you can do 70 damage, however the attack isn't affected by weakness or resistance. Similar to how you play Crobat Prime, when your opponent has a Pokemon stuck in the active zone and they're looking for a way to retreat it, you can bring up the Mega and snipe around the bench, taking cheap and easy prizes. Cards like Judge and Copycat are great ways of matching your opponent's hand size so that you can continuously keep attacking with Mega and taking prizes. To conclude this main deck section, the last two cards I want to look at help you maintain the disruption as well as taking prizes, and they are Apom from the Unleashed set and Jirachi, which is from 2 sets but I prefer the Cooler Legends one, so I'm going to go with that. Apom only really has one main use for you, 2 if you count its retreat costs, but that's something I'll get to in a bit. Its main use is its attack Tailcode. Tailcode for 1 colorless energy allows you to move energies from the defending Pokemon onto any one of their bench Pokemon. This is a really good attribute to have within your deck because it means that when your opponent's finally gathering up enough energies so they can retreat their active Pokemon, you can place Apom up to your active spot and move those energies onto your opponent's bench, bearing in mind that your opponent only plays a certain number of energies within their deck. So let's move on to Jirachi. Jirachi's ability, Stardust Song, means that when you play Jirachi from your hand onto your bench, you can flip 3 coins, and for every heads you get, you can place a Psychic Energy from your discard pile onto Jirachi. Going back to Apom's retreat costs, the reason why it's so valuable is because most of the cards in your deck already have 3 retreats, so by attaching Psychic Energies onto Apom and retreating it, you can throw those Psychic Energies into the discard pile, ready for the Jirachi to flip the 3 coins and hopefully flip maybe 1 or 2 and put energies onto Jirachi. The reason why the energies are so important to Jirachi is because of its attack, Time Hollow. For 1 Psychic Energy, Time Hollow allows you to de-evolve your opponent's Pokemon based on the number of energies that are attached to Jirachi. So for example, 2 energies on Jirachi will mean that you can de-evolve 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. This is a really good asset to have when paired with some of your Pokemon that have sniping credentials, such as your Yanmega and your Crobat. Say for example your opponent has a Cyndaquil with 40 HP, and they were able to rare candy that into a Typhlosion. Say for example you linear attack their Typhlosion for 40 damage, and the next turn you promote your Jirachi to de-evolve that Typhlosion back down to its basic form, which was the Cyndaquil, which only had 40 HP anyway. That means because it only has 40 HP and it de-evolves back down with 40 damage, that Pokemon will then be knocked out. So guys, we're reaching the end of the discussion now, and this is the last section which I've labelled as Skeleton, and for obvious reasons I guess. For those of you who are interested in disruption decks, and maybe exploring the Mew Toolbox, I've kind of got a little bit of a skeleton here for you, just so that you can pick it up and change it around. I think the thing to keep in mind with the skeleton though is that it might not be to every player's preference. For example, something that I've been test playing a lot with recently is playing twins with this deck, and the reason for that is because if I fall behind I can then set up a turn 2 Vileplume. However, that's just my preference and it might not be yours, so test play and see what works best for you. Anyway guys, so that's pretty much it. This discussion's been more so about my thoughts on the format. However, if you have any more ideas towards this deck, or there's another deck you've been playing with recently, then we'd love to hear it. Also, definitely check out our Facebook if you haven't already. That way we can interact with you a lot more personally. I'll be sure to put a link in the description box below for those of you who want to check it out. So with that all said and done, I hope this has been insightful to you, and definitely stay tuned for more updates. Thanks guys, and I'll catch you next time.